Yo, what's good campers, it's your boy Killer Beezy, and today we're doing a different type of video, man. We are going to be talking about Symbiote Supreme. Now, Symbiote Supreme is a champion I pulled a few weeks ago now, and I'm finally taking him to rank 4, and I unfortunately don't have the footage, but I also awakened him shortly after this video. So, what I want to do is I want to talk about Symbiote Supreme has 3 genetic blessings, right? But before we get into detail with regards to those 3 genetic blessings, he has a passive buff called Genetic Potential, and what this does is throughout the fight you'll notice that you'll do certain things to build it up to 100, and every time your genetic blessing changes, if you have 100 genetic potential, it will consume that 100 potential and it will give you 100% of power bar, right? So that comes in very handy because if you're fighting a champion that has a lot of buffs, and you can just use it all free and get rid of all the buffs, and you can literally get to a point where it's like you're spamming it from the genetic potential alone. But we'll get onto that later on in the video. So we're gonna show, I think I've got about 3 different fights to showcase different abilities from Symbiote Supreme while I discuss the genetic blessings that he has. Right, so Symbiote Supreme has 3 different genetic blessings, right? So he has one called, I think it's pronounced Chthon's Cunning, right? And what this does is this has a 100% chance that when the blessing is triggered to immediately nullify all buffs on the opponent. Now this buff is really useful because while this buff is active, this is going to be sort of like the kind of pink color buff on Symbiote Supreme, right? So while this buff is also active, you have the chance, if you throw an L2, it actually power steals. I know this doesn't mention it on the when you first look at Symbiote Supreme abilities or whatnot, but it is so handy, man. Literally, I've been fighting with the champion, and when you're fighting a champion like Hyperion, he gains power, and if you aren't able to put a stagger effect on him quick enough, as you can see, I'm currently stealing power from Hyperion. So, if your staggers don't proc up at the right time and Hyperion's still power gaining, you're able to steal power from him if you use the L2 once you're in this passive for the genetic blessings. Right, so then the next genetic blessing is Null Shadow, I believe. And Null Shadow, basically it's like a crazy armor up, man. It's like having perfect block on Symbiote Supreme, man. Like, if you're fighting a champion that has some crazy attack or does some crazy damage, like being in this Null Shadow will basically allow you to just block the attacks, man. And that's really good for someone like myself who is a scrub at the game, because I know when I'm in the current passive that I'm in now, I know I can just block attacks, man. And if you use an L2 within this attack, you actually place a weakness debuff on the opponent, which I haven't necessarily found too useful. I haven't really found too much of a use for it. But the third and final passive, which it has to be one of my favorites, man. I love using the L2 when this passive procs up, man. And this is basically sets Fangs. Now, this has a 100% chance when this blessing is triggered to gain a Fury buff, which increases your attack by up to 1661.53 for 10 seconds, based on the genetic potential. Now, I absolutely love this, man, because when you're in this phase, every hit that you do on the opponent makes them bleed. So you can literally stack up the bleed so crazy, man. And because of the Fury, you notice the extra damage output, man. You definitely do notice it. So you're gonna see it on the screen where there's times where I spam the L1. I don't really use the L1 often, but again, it depends on the scenario. So one of the major things I love about this is when you use the L2 in this set Fangs passive, you put an armor break on the opponent, and man, remember, mine is a rank 4 Symbiote Supreme, and I can hit anything from maybe like 2 to 3k up to like 12 to 15k, man. It is crazy. And then on top of that, you still got the opponent bleeding. Then you're going to be hitting him when your Fury's up, and on top of that, you're going to be hitting the opponent with a stack of armor break on, man. It is absolutely insane. That has to be one of my favorite phases of Symbiote Supreme. So, you know, going into his special attacks, you know, the L1 will nullify one buff once you activate it, and then it will switch to the next blessing. So, you know, for someone like me, I'm not really a big fan of his armor up buff, which is called the Null Shadow. So for me, if I have an L1 and that Null Shadow is activated, I'll probably use the L1 just so I can switch to the next blessing. But then the special 2 is crazy, man. I love it. Like I've explained earlier, you know, in the 3 different phases, he's got one, which is the pink one, where he has a 100% chance to steal 50% of the opponent's max power. Then you've got the Null Shadow, where if you activate their SP2, it's got a 100% chance to place a weakness debuff, which is reducing their attacking rating by 33% for 10 seconds. And then you have the set Fangs, which has a 100% chance to place an armor break debuff on the opponent, reducing their armor by 2050 for 10 seconds, man. That has got to be one of my favorites, man. But on top of all of that, as you may have seen on the screen already, if you activate Symbiote Supreme's special 3 attack, it has a 100% chance to reset the genetic blessing timer and activate all 3 genetic blessings, man. And it also gives you 100% genetic potential. And man, this is crazy. Like, this is absolutely crazy. When you use his L3, especially if you're fighting an opponent that has quite a lot of buffs, once you activate the L3, you are literally going to nullify all of the buffs, and you're gonna see all of the blessings pop up on the screen, and he's just gonna be doing some crazy damage, man. So that definitely, for me, when you're fighting champions that don't necessarily proc a lot of buffs, you can probably get away with, you know, spamming between the L1. If it's like you're fighting a Hyperion and the power gain's still there and he's approaching, so he's above the L2, you know, you can probably use the L1 because it's a guaranteed nullify, and then it's more than likely, if you've got a stagger up, that, you know, the next time he has a power gain, the stagger is going to obviously nullify it straight away. But in the most scenario, man, the L2 against an opponent that only procs like 1 or 2 debuffs is definitely my favorite, man. It's definitely my favorite for Symbiote Supreme, because it's almost like you don't need to worry about the debuffs that much, and therefore, you know, when fighting Hyperion, you can just fight him like normal, because you're going to be applying stagger a lot. And when you're applying stagger a lot, you'll take care of the buffs within itself. You know, you don't really have to worry about nullifying them so much, because you're naturally doing it just by fighting. So that's probably one of my favorite, just by spamming the SP2. But in a scenario where you're fighting opponents with a lot of buffs, the L3 is definitely where you want to go all of the time, man, because you're going to get a lot of the extra damage from the L3. You're going to nullify it guaranteed from the L3, and you're going to reset your genetic potential and gain 100 from it, which is going to guarantee you to get a full power bar of special again. Sorry, 100% of your power bar again once you switch blessings. Oh, it's just amazing, man. And you can literally just rotate that through the whole fight. And Symbiote Supreme does not need to be duped to be good, man. So he's definitely one of the better champs to have, man. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one, man. Peace.